on February 13th. During your confirmation hearing, Senator Murray asked you, if confirmed, do you commit to getting every dollar we have invested in our students and our schools out to them? And you replied, well, the appropriated dollars and those monies that are passed by Congress, yes. And Senator Brooks asked you whether you would support any directive from the president to freeze funds that have been appropriated by Congress, and you responded, if they have been appropriated by Congress, those funds should be disseminated. Yet you stood by as Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency froze or terminated more than $1 billion in congressionally directed federal grants at the Department of Education, and you've made no attempts to reinstate those funds. So Secretary McMahon, were you not being truthful when you were testified in the Senate? And if you were being truthful, what is your plan to immediately reinstate these funds?
Well, I thank you for that question, and I would like to perhaps explore with you a little further as to exactly which grants you were talking about. I believe
$1 billion in congressionally directed federal grants that have been cut.
And as I said, I would like to work with you and to understand exactly which grants you're talking about. I can also tell you that as part of my testimony
Madam Secretary, I'm reclaiming my time because the question is, congressionally directed funds have been cut. What are you doing to reinstate those funds?
And I also said in that testimony that we would abide by the law, and that's exactly what we will do.
Well, that would be to reinstate the funds. And I know you have this so-called simplified funding program that consolidates programs, including Title IV-A, which I always lead the appropriations letter for. But overall, this consolidation, so-called consolidation, leads to a $4.5 billion cut. So that makes your statement untruthful if you're not doing anything to restore those funds. With regard to Title IV-A, can you name one of the major categories in Title IV-A where cuts will lead to a well-rounded education or world-class education, as you state?
Let me respond to one other thing that you asked before. And when you were talking about the cuts of $4.5 billion, along with that cut goes a great reduction in the cost of regulatory compliance.
Madam Secretary, I need to reclaim my time because I want you to answer the question about which category in 4A where cutting will lead to a world-class education.
I'm certainly going to answer your question, but also I think it's important for this committee and for taxpayers to understand that when we cut red tape for regulations—
I understand, Madam Secretary. I have to reclaim my time because you're not answering my question.
Well, I'm trying to answer your question.
The cuts have happened, and as Secretary of Education, your job is to faithfully execute the law.
Right.
And if you can't do that, you shouldn't be in this job. I have another question for you. Since you've been in office, you've violated or stated your intention to violate several major federal laws that have been enacted by Congress. And one of them I want to talk about is the Education Sciences Reform Act. So that's what I'll focus on. Congress enacted the law more than 20 years ago and created the Institute of Education Sciences. IES provides evidence-based data to improve student outcomes and support teachers. But the Trump administration unilaterally canceled more than $900 million in IES grant funding and reduced IES staff from 175 to fewer than 20 employees, a reduction of about 90%. So Secretary McMahon, what statute authorizes you to unilaterally dismantle an office Congress created?
What we have done to the benefit of those grants is to, well, first of all, let me say that there are a lot of contracts that are done in IES. So none of those contracted services have been affected. And also, what is part of IES and the funding you're talking about are for NAEP, and the NAEP program is already in place for the next 5 years. However, we did renegotiate that contract and save $540 billion.
And you could do that with fewer than 20 employees, is what you're saying?
We are doing it because we are able to continue doing what we do because the contracted services which are still in place have not been affected.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that you can meet the statutory obligations without money or adequate staff. What do the NAEP scores show when disaggregated by income, by the way?
I beg your pardon?
What do the NAEP scores show when disaggregated by income?
When disaggregate, I don't understand the question.
Okay, well, maybe you should look at the NAEP scores because what they say, you and the chairman and a lot of members of this committee use the NAEP scores to talk about how education is doing. What we really need to look at is how we address low-income students.
Oh, okay, you're talking about performance and achievement gaps. Okay, I get it now.
Yes.
Okay, well, NAEP scores, I think, continually show what we all know to be true, I think. I've looked at it in my state of Connecticut. It's one of the things that first got me into government. I looked at the achievement gaps, and that's what I wanted to make sure that we were servicing.
And as my time expires, Madam Secretary, what they show is that we need to have investments to help our low-income students succeed, and you are cutting those investments. And I ran for Congress because I wanted to make public education better, but not just for a few, not just those who are worthy of private dollars, and not just those in wealthy neighborhoods, but every single student. As Secretary of Education, I hope you would have the same goal.
I
yield
do,
back.
and thank you.